heads on the wall, dear heads on the wall, always watching you. Hey! Dear heads on the wall, dear heads on the wall, always watching you. Dear hunter shot Bambi, Bambi took the fall, dear heads on the wall, always watching you. Yeah. You're not paranoid if they're out to get you. You're not paranoid if they're out to get you.
Today is January the 18th, and it is a Sunday. Meant to be out yesterday, but I actually got this far too, but the snowing conditions were getting worse, and you kind of had to make a judgment call as to how likely you're going to be to get out or sleep there. So, with it being what it was, I chose to fall back and punt and come back today. So, we're here today. You're still out in the fresh snow because we had a second wave of it last night, and so tracking and whatever else comes today. Have some commentary on a couple of things that have come to my attention. I'm going to say in advance with a disclaimer, this is not an accusation, this is a observation and possibly some advice. So take it with that, take it in the spirit that it's intended. And in the meantime, let's get moving and see what we find today. Thanks. And for anyone who doesn't get it, this is why you come out on a day like today. You're like at the pristine part of the day of the snow, and you literally can hear a pin drop out here. I'm doing my best with the camera not to bounce it, so in advance, shut up. So what I was going to talk about today, there's an upcoming event from being hosted by a guy out of New Jersey. I don't know him personally, but I have heard of him, so that's neither a condemnation or an endorsement of. I don't know the guy enough to do that. He is hosting a, I guess, 2-day affair in southeastern Connecticut, which is an interesting location. There are some state forests down there, unless he has a private land situation that has not crossed my radar. That being said, I have some cautionary advice. This is not an accusation. If it is on state land, though, there was a guy from the BFRO a while back that did he charged admission to his event on either state land or BLM land. I'm not sure which. But the government came in and they fined him because they look at that as like operating a business on government land, and you didn't get a permit. The crime is not having the event. The crime is basically the man did not get his cut. So I don't know if that's the case in this. I have approached the guy to find out more. I may or may not attend based on the details, but I do throw out that advice. The deep may or may not care, but it's a distinct possibility that they might want to get their cut. So I don't know if you've talked to them or not. I throw that out there as some cautionary advice. So far as we walk through this, there's a lot of divots. As it gets a little warmer today, because it is going to dip up near 40. It's actually not that cold today, which is why I was able to get out here. The roads would... Yesterday, long story short, the reason I abandoned ship was I got to where I normally walk in here, and the weather forecast had been it's going to get over itself and stop like it is now, but instead it did kind of the polar opposite, polar being an intended pun, and there are some very steep and very windy roads getting here, and if you do that in the snow with a sedan, you're kind of taking your chances. So I kind of like prudence over valor kind of a consideration for that. I have video that's going to probably make up the intro for this one from yesterday's drive, because I mean, despite the fact it was getting dicey out, when you're out in the middle of that, I'm sorry, it is just beautiful. I mean, this is nice today, just to be out in the pristine part before people get in here, or it melts and gets all crappy and crusty. Because this time of year, unfortunately, in southern New England, that is our norm. You want powder, without rare exception, down here to the rule. You probably have to head to Vermont or New Hampshire. You could probably get it in northern Mass because the conditions there kind of mirror that. But down here, once you're into like mid-February, you're in the slush belt, unfortunately. So, like me, make sure that you have waterproofer for your boots, because boots that you get that say they're waterproof don't always hold up. And slush in particular is like constant self-insistent wetness that will find a way in. It's very good at that, much to the person's chagrin. And even out here right now, it's like 34, 35 degrees. It's not that cold because there's literally no wind. It's like completely still right now. But when you add wetness and rawness to it, that changes the game. That's why I was in some potential danger the time I got lost. I keep referring to that, but it was like hypothermia was the issue, not the degree to which I got lost. Out here, you are basically in a multi-mile long box. There's a trail going in over there. There's a trail if you go far enough into Massachusetts over there. There is a large wetland way the hell over if you go in there, say a half a mile or so, and if you go the other way there's another one, which kind of form natural boundaries. There's a wetland way over there, and if you go way to the other side and you get to the state line, there's a trail that makes the box. And even if you went beyond the wetland over this way, you come out the other side, there's a trail that leads you to a different trailhead, and you got a ways to walk back to your car, but that's about, unless you do something amazingly stupid or you actually get injured somehow significantly. Not that that's impossible in here. On a windy day, you could take a hit on the head from a Widowmaker like that. That's a whole different situation. Today, it's pretty still, though, which is going to be the pleasure of being out here. I have a long weekend for work, so if I couldn't have gotten out here today, I would have come out tomorrow, because tomorrow's supposedly not going to snow. But today's the day when this is all like vintage, peak, still snowy conditions, and that's what I was hoping for, and so far it worked out. So it is going to pick up again later, but we have a little respite right now that I snuck out here. So there is that event coming up. I think there might be a second one. I have to go back and look. There were two. There's the one in southeastern Connecticut, because it's in the neighborhood. I'm not going to just turn a blind eye to it. And I have heard from the guy, so he is charging, but what he is charging isn't so ridiculous. So I'm not gonna. There's a guy in Pennsylvania that does that too, but he put the money there goes to charity. So if it's something like that, I don't really necessarily poo-poo that or like take umbrage of it, because if it's for charity, then it's not something exploitive. But again, I would just be careful of, if it's state land, if it's private land, whatever you worked out with the landowner is your own business and his or hers. But if it's public land, just be aware of that. There is a lot of variance of public land just in this greater area alone. Right now, we're effectively on state land. So you can snowmobile, you can hike, you can hunt, you can fish. And I have done 3 out of the 4 there. I don't own a snowmobile, but I've done everything else in here. If you go over that way through the snow wall there, there's a triple partitioning of the land. Part is state land, part is a land trust that if you're not a town resident and they find you on there, you will get a trespassing charge. And part of it is a watershed and MDC land, which is basically the water department. And you can hunt there, you can hike there. I asked about camping one time though, and the response was a list of the applicable fines and or criminal charges for criminal trespass. So apparently that's not going to happen. State land, interestingly enough, is, in my honest opinion, probably more of a ask for forgiveness, not permission thing. There is no signage. There is literally nothing written up about this particular area for camping out that I've been able to find in a official capacity for the state government, and therefore there's a lot they would be potentially open to interpretation, but there is nothing that I'm aware of specifically saying no, you can't do that. So that is interesting. I do know that I have found on state land a little bit further to the north of here more than one improvised fire ring. So people do it. Probably hunters or such, maybe squatchers, you never know. There has been sporadic activity in this area. Not really going to know what the southeast allegedly has going on until I talk to the guy on the phone, which will talk to the dude about, I'm guessing during the week, the early part of the week sometime. And we'll figure that piece out. I'm not going to dwell on the advice because, I mean, people are, like I said, he's a big boy. He knows what he's doing. So hopefully he just doesn't stumble into something like that. And because I have been in that area, and I want to say forget the source of it, but there was a report or two from down that way. Moneymaker would have you believe there's a whole fucking clan of them down there. If, on the other hand, you've been down there and you live in the state and you are familiar with that neck of the woods on both sides, the Rhode Island and the Connecticut border, what you're going to come away with the impression of is Matt Moneymaker says a lot of things. And like I said, small family group coming through, and I'm talking about this. Maybe. Whole clan? Matt Moneymaker's a bit of an optimist. But that's what makes his money. There, I said it. Anyway, I am going to take a break and cover some ground and look for some tracks. What's interesting, I mean, I've seen a couple of deer tracks, but other than that, it's interesting the lack thereof. Showing just how pristine the snow is. It literally stopped like within the last hour and a half. But I'll be back in a bit, and we'll take things from there. Kind of more the same. So the only wildlife I've seen out here is some kind of a chickadee making a very tiny little bit of noise. Other than that, I thought for one second I heard a deer going by or something, kind of like crunching through the snow, because if you listen, it's not totally quiet, but the only tracks I have to go out here so far have been a deer somewhere, and he could be in the greater vicinity. That being said, the area also has your normal varmints, from porcupine to possum to raccoons to, you got bobcats in here. There's beaver over that way. There's like 2 or 3 different beaver lodges. I have seen otters in here before. So they're about. You have, I think we have mink. You have fisher cats down here, but I think you have mink too. So they're there. There's at least 1 or 2 moose in the area, because you see their tracks now and again. That's going to happen to me at least once today. I know I'm going to be walking along, and I'm going to get that like nice little freaking dip of snow, that cold wet snow right down your neck, and you're not warm again until you get back inside. I hate that so much. You know it's going to happen, but hopefully not. But it's just the conditions are so prime right now for that. So I don't really know, as far as the community goes, I don't really know what else is going on. You have that, there's a event. I don't know if it's directly being done by, his first name's Mike also. He is a guy out of New York who might be doing something. That's what I gotta, when I get home today, I have to fall back and get my bearings on that. I know about the one in southeast Connecticut. And like I said, there are 2 or 3 sizable state forests and areas like that down there. And the thing I know about that area the most is in the summer, like mid to late summer, that's usually the first time you start hearing in the state about equine encephalitis and mosquitoes and all that. Because of the lovely little bleep show we have about biting parasitic insects in the state and nearby regions. Because you have those, you have ticks, you have deerkeds, which for those unfamiliar is an invasive Chinese insect that looks like a flying tick, sort of, kind of. Take away 2 legs, and it looks basically like a weird cross between a tick and a crab spider. Only they move a lot quicker, but they do have the same habits. What's not known is whether or not they transmit anything or not. But they have a weird little squishy body, and smashing them is not so easy. But doesn't mean you can't smash them in your fingers, though. Anyway, I seem to be rambling. I guess today is day out in the snow, unless something happens. But the thing I will say is that if you actually did have signs of activity out here today, you would definitely hear it. It's so quiet out here right now. Which is why I wanted to be out here today. For the peace, if nothing else, if there's nothing going on. And so far to date, there's no signs of them in the area doing migrational stuff. I'm increasingly of the theory that the infrasonic phenomenon I've encountered in the past only seems to happen during the 1 week or a couple of days stretch out of this time of year when we hit single digits for like 5 days in a row, because you don't hear it otherwise. Why? No idea yet. And again, to a former NESRA member who says it's expanding ice and contracting, and like, I know what that sounds like. It does not sound like a subwoofer's feedback. 2 years ago, there was some weird ass thing going on out here that sounded like that. I've heard it once since, and it is not ice. That's not how that works. I appreciate the feedback, but you're assuming, and you weren't here to hear it. If you did, you wouldn't think the same way. You wouldn't think that's what it was. But so far, we haven't had the conditions for that. Although all the way through the middle of February, you have the potential for extreme drops in cold, and You don't mind freezing your butt off. This is possibly a foolish move, but maybe not. Because that could have gone down my neck. One thing I'm not going to try today is to navigate the stream, because the problem with that being with all the snow down here, you have no definition of where the water versus the ice versus a rock to jump over is, and you could wipe out, and it's just better not to do that. So we're not going to. I'm going to probably take another segment break so I can listen in more and see what's going on, if anything, here. So we'll be back in a bit. Back, and it is interesting, the utter lack of tracks out here right now. You have nothing but, you have things like this, which is just like dollops of snow that fell off the tree, because as the temperature gets up towards mid-30s, it's going to warm up enough. You're going to start having stuff like this fall off and make dollops. If I came here tomorrow, you'd see a lot of that activity happening. That's why it's kind of special to be able to get out here right after the storm, where you have all these, just like the pristine conditions of this, because this is something you don't get a lot of unless you time it. But I mean, truth be told, I would have liked to have been out here in the middle of the snow yesterday, but getting out of here would have been a royal pain in the rear. Driving a sedan through the conditions I was driving in, not so much like right then when I left, because I left when I timed it and it was a fighting chance of pulling it off, but forward that ahead an hour, and that would have been downright dangerous. Or there's a spot in a nearby state forest where you have to go down a very steep and windy hill to get down to the bottom, and then you have to conversely go back up a very steep, not as windy on the other side, but a very steep hill. And if you can't get out of that, you are at the very least waiting for the plow to come, to be stranded down there. It probably wouldn't be all night, because it did look like the plow came through within the last 24, but you'd be there a while. And that's to presume that there's not a spot where the steepness of the hill you're going down, if you slide clean off the road, is not going to be a problem. It's not as bad here. There's a couple spots in Vermont, though, that you have the road, and then you have the hill on the side of the road, and the steepness of that hill and the fact you're going down 100 feet, you could easily die from that. So prudence over valor can be the thing. There is something over here. Actually, okay, we have tracks here. Look like Bambi, nothing that unusual, but let's come up and take a look. And you can tell just by the shape of them, yes, this is a deer heading through, going that away, or the reverse. But there really have not been a lot this morning coming through here, which is interesting. Give it some time, and what you normally see will be Bambi. If you go further in on the other side of the stream, which I'm not going to risk hyperextending my knee again. There's moose. There's at least one moose in there. There's a bobcat or two in there. I've seen their tracks. And for those that ask, is a bobcat dangerous to people? Not typically, unless they're around. I mean, there's been cases where people have been attacked by a rabid once, but that's the exception, not the rule. Same thing with the Yotes. Excuse me. But the after effects of coffee being what it is. Or if you're a grammar Nazi, what they are. Yeah, so what else is going on? I think I said there's a second event coming up, which is somewhere in New York with the Adirondack, or is it the other one? or is it the Catskill? It's one of the two. Like I said, I got to go back and get the details, but they are. If it's who I think it is, I possibly know the person hosting that one too, and I'd have to go find out more details about when and where they're doing that. It's in the next few months, but I noticed they're not doing it in the dead of winter. Unlike a hammock camping club that I joined a group of a long time ago. They go out and do shit in, like, up north when it's like single digits. They have they're a different breed, I guess, because it gets really cold up there. I mean, if you're in the White Mountains too, I think I told you about a couple of videos ago about a really seasoned backpacker who died from conditions up there. I will never for the life of me understand how this woman made the decision to go there alone. She was in minus 10 degrees and 90-mile-an-hour winds when she died. That's not a fun time. But she's not like some little amateur, dainty little snow bunny who died out there being stupid. She was training for Everest. I mean, this was somebody who knew what she was doing, but I think maybe had an inflated sense of what her abilities, where they peaked. But regardless, either way, it's a shame she had to go that way. It really was a technical glitch on her spot communicator that did her in, because they were actually out looking for her. That's the beast of the whole thing. All right, so I'm going to take a segment break and decide if I want to go into that, because that gets thicker, and that's when I get snow down my back, and I really don't want to do that because of all these. This is the hidden assassin of the woods today. It ain't going to kill you. It's going to go and give you a nice little cold chill down your back, and that's not pleasant. So we're going to take a break and decide my next move and see what we want to do here. But we will be back. For better for worse, it is pin drop quiet out here today, so we are going to begin our journey back, and mainly because the snow is going to resurge in a bit. So to kind of make the obvious, I kind of snuck out here while there's a little bit of a reprieve. And that will bring us to the end of a video. There's not really just a lot going on out here today. There's not a lot of tracks really either, so conditions are what they are. It's pristine, and I guess the wildlife is slacking today, so that's what it is. So anyway, let's wrap this one up, barring a radical change in that on the way out. But like, subscribe, leave commentary, leave suggestions, leave criticism, as I made a video responding to some the other week. I will respond to it. I don't think I was totally tearing the guy a new one. He had some valid points, and some others that I do disagree with, but we are approaching the subject and coming from two different places, I think, so that will do that. That'll be the effect of that. Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up, and thank you again for listening, and we will catch you next time. Bye.